am really pleased to announce our next panel where we're going to talk about hiring, in addition to a lot of other exciting topics. In our panel today, we have today's market, how can your company stand out? And I have three wonderful panelists that are here with me today. So in the past 2 years, we've seen a hot candidate market where terms like great resignation, war on talent, focus companies to rethink their recruiting processes, benefits, and company culture in order to attract top talent. As the market shows signs of slowing, we've seen big companies go through hiring freezes or laying off employees altogether. Yet in an ever-changing market, attracting and retaining top talent will always continue to remain a top priority. Today, we'll explore how companies can stand out via different employer branding strategies, benefits, and recruiting as well. So I'd love to introduce our panelists for today and get some insights to start on the current candidate market. So I will first introduce Louisa. She is the head of talent advisory at Cherry Ventures, which is an early-stage venture capital firm. Louisa, we had a conversation last week about you were mentioning seeing the market start to change when it comes to hiring. What are you seeing right now in terms of your startup portfolio when it comes to changes in hiring?
Well, I guess if I take a step back, I mean, Cherry Ventures, obviously, we invest in pre-seed and seed. And what we are seeing is there's still a lot of liquidity within that investing structure. So, early stage startups, they're going out there, they've got their first injection of cash, and they're still hiring. But we are actually advising caution to our own portfolio, as you'll have seen probably other investment and VC funds are doing as well. In our own portfolio, we do also have a job board. So all of our startups do come onto our job board and we post all of their opportunities. We are seeing a decrease, and I think that's a healthy decrease. As I say, we're certainly advising our startups just to not panic, but look at caution, look at your burn rates, look at the longevity of your growth phase. So obviously, some of our startups are in very, very different circumstances to other, but we are seeing a caution happening. So over the past 8 weeks, I've seen a decrease of about 39% of open roles. So within the portfolio, we've currently got about 2,700 open roles. It's still substantial, but I think people are just being a little bit more conservative. They're thinking about critical roles rather than just growth, and I think hyper-growth now, people are a little bit more cautious around that. Build it and they will come. A little bit more cautious around that. Cash is king at the moment. So I think people are just being a little bit more, intentional with their hiring. That's what I'm seeing.
And just to follow up quickly on that, is there a specific business function that's seeing a reduction, or is it just across the board?
I am seeing it across the board. Outside of our portfolio, I am definitely seeing specific functions. So I think if you're in the talent acquisition space, certainly with the larger scale companies, you've had the likes of recent attrition and redundancies in Klarna, Netflix. There's quite a substantial lift going around actually of people. Talent acquisition people, sometimes marketing can get hit. I wouldn't advise all marketing functions. I think you need to be very, very careful. You can't just blanket. I think topics where sometimes you might want to look at restructuring your sales department. I think it's generally across the board though, but there are some that are being a little hit more than others.
Yeah, makes sense. So now moving on to our second panelist that I get to welcome. Janneke is the co-founder of Capital T, a VC fund that invests in technology companies using proprietary technology to evaluate entrepreneurial teams. Janneke, have you also been seeing a similar trend in terms of changes of rate in hiring?
Well, I actually do see two completely different worlds. So the companies that just raised in the last few months, for them, it's actually great. what's happening, because it's much more easy to find amazing talent with less competition of the big tech companies. It's easier to find good people. And since they just raised, they still need to hire, maybe a slightly lower pace, but still hiring. So that's one side. Then we have the companies who were looking to raise in the next like 6 to 12 months. And for them, it's really different because they need to extend their runway because, well, you are obviously not sure that you can raise. So they will have to get rid of people, hiring freezes. So it's so opposite. It's really challenging for some and very interesting for others. And that's also why we did not send out a letter to our founders, because they are all on Twitter. They know what's happening. So we try to check in, and we are still calling everybody from the portfolio about their mental health, because this is tough for founders, especially the ones in the second group. Firing people is the most difficult thing to do, and making that mind shift from a time where everything, well, first you had COVID, then everything was like growing and amazing, and now you have to change back again completely. That's not easy. And so we hope we can be supportive there.
Yeah, I think that's also a good point. I was at a startup that went through a similar process, and it was definitely very, very emotional, I think, for the whole team and also for the founding team to have to cut a lot of staff. Maybe just one question to follow up, because I know probably there's a couple founders watching maybe that are going through this. Would you have any advice for them when they're going through that hard time?
Yeah, talk to people, because if you're just taking it all on your own, it is a lot, and talking to people really helps. Plus, I think you need to keep in mind that you do this for the business to survive. So then, well, the alternative is that the business is not going to make it, which is even worse. So, and there's different ways in how you can let go of people. So you can still let go of people, and they are your biggest ambassadors. So try to be a human being. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. So really be open and honest about what's going on.
Yeah. People understand. They see the news and they might be frustrated, but make sure that they still remain your biggest ambassadors.
Thank you. And to introduce our last panelist, Irina is the HR and Culture Intelligence Architect at Sanos X, which is a corporate startup that incubates and scales health and well-being solutions in close collaborations with partners across the health ecosystem. Irina, within Sanos X and maybe what you've been seeing on a broad scale, do you agree with our other two panelists in terms of the changing market, or how has it been for you?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amelia. And first of all, it's my absolute pleasure to be part of this panel alongside with Luisa and Janneke, and tackling such an important topic of talent recruitment, as well as how can actually employer stand out, right? Such a critical topic on the market today. So from my experience, was it easy or hard? I would call it a challenge and a good learning opportunity for me professionally as well. I have some good news. Based on my experience, the global diverse talent is out there that is eager, passionate, and that wants to contribute and make an impact. Question remains, so how do we actually stand out to these individuals? How do we attract them, right? I'd like to bring up 3 points from my end, based again on my experiences. One of the things that I see is important is to actually think on behalf of the candidate. And what I mean with this is set up the candidate for success, provide the information, give the opportunity perhaps to speak to someone within Sanos 6 in our case, and help them to learn from the subject matter experts, so to say. right? One other very cool initiative that we've been implementing last 2 years and also implementing this summer is embracing the global talent in our entrepreneur in residence internship program, where we are targeting to find healthcare enthusiasts who are passionate to bring in their knowledge and passion and make the change, right? To come up with innovative ideas. To do this, there were a couple of different strategies in the course of the year. Some things worked, some things didn't, and that's okay. But leveraging, again, a community of the universities, connecting with them, pitching, communicating what we aim to achieve, really speak from the purpose. And again, being available to speak to the talent as well, connecting with them, right? And the results of it are already visible. From the previous years, we hired full-time employees from that program, and seeing the talent evolve and continue the innovation journey within the healthcare space, coming up with really cool projects, cool ideas, is just remarkable. And this is what is a secret sauce, let's put it this way, success sauce in Sana6, the employees. And last but not least, what I want to mention is one of the things that I'm working on as well is building, call it Sana6 Friends. And those are basically individuals that, let's say, for some reason, we didn't end in their, let's say, employment relationship, but there is something, there is a mutual interest from our end in the candidacy, in the skills, but also for the candidate interest in Sana6. So how do we remain in touch? How do we perhaps engage outside of the recruitment scheme, right? How do we leverage perhaps newsletter or have workshops and so on and so forth? So working on that and maintaining the conversation with these individuals.
Thanks so much for that overview. Maybe just a follow-up. Are you seeing a change in terms of the hiring that you're doing? Is it pretty that you're hiring more right now or less, or is it about the same?
I would say it's I do see change, probably to tackle it from the perspective that also different roles, different needs. So that's driven by what do we need, which skills are we missing that we need to find the talent and help us scale further. But I always tend to say I have a lot of recruitment to do, which is a good news. It means that we are scaling up and we need this talent. So we are there to find these individuals to help us grow further. So do I see a change in that sense? I would say yes.
And I think it's interesting to see all these different perspectives come together because how you said it, Yannicka, it's kind of from two perspectives. From, okay, we're scaling, we need these critical roles, we're hiring, versus, okay, it might be time that we let go. So the market's definitely changing. I think we've all seen this with big tech companies letting go or maybe reducing, let's just say, compensation packages or looking to really save money in these times. But taking a closer look, let's just say, at employer benefits, this is obviously an important thing to attracting talent, but also to keeping the current workforce happy. And I'd love to start with Luisa. In terms of what you've been seeing with the startups that you've been helping, what are areas, maybe packages, benefits that they could cut to reduce spend, and which ones should they make sure that they definitely keep?
Okay, so this is a really, really emotive area for employees. So I think before entering anything like this, I think the biggest piece of advice I could give to any company is consult your employees. I've worked for previous companies where we've started to make little cuts. And I'll give you a very funny example that caused a whole outrage. And I was amazed. You wouldn't have necessarily thought, but there was a cost-cutting exercise done. And we used to provide all our employees with a selection of jams and a selection of bread for they came into the morning to have breakfast. We changed the jams from maybe top brand jams to like more economy brand names, not like own brand supermarket chains, but just lower branded jams. that caused Jamgate within the whole of the organization. Suddenly it blew up on social media. Everyone was complaining about it. So you have to be so careful when you're looking at something that, is important, and you may not realize it's as important as it is. I would say of the important benefits, it really, really depends to your employees and their life stages. Typically where I've probably been through 3 quite major recessions during my time. And so I am aware of the type of cuts that are made. You tend to look at the more periphery ones. So if you're offering a gym membership, those can sometimes be the first to go, but consult your employees, because if that's super important to them, understand the reason. Just understand what is important to them. So, I don't think there's a one size fits all environment. I think there are some opportunities to consult with your employees. There is obviously, some people do favor remote working. That is a very, very low cost exercise for your company to engage with, and often can be a cost saving because maybe you don't need the same kind of rental and office space. There is mixed reviews from employees who either appreciate remote working or do not appreciate remote working. So the hybrid option, those are one ways that you could look at it. But I say my biggest suggestion with all of this is consult your employees. If you are looking to make cuts, explain why first. Give them the option to pick. I send out an employee survey. If you need to cut things, engage with them, and so long as they feel part of their journey, they're far more likely to be acceptable and understand the reasons behind it. If you just do it unilaterally, it's not going to work.
Yeah, especially with the jam, I also feel very passionate about what jam I choose, so I feel for those employees. Irina, have you also had any sort of, let's just say, similar jam gate, or how have you been looking at benefits for Sanosex?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Benefits was actually one of the first things, obviously, that we've been tackling when I joined Sanosex. And the way I'd like to probably answer this question is that we, make themes for our benefits. One benefit that we really look a lot at is the team development. What I mean by this is we are eager to help our employees to develop individually and professionally. So therefore, they receive, designated budget for any sort of development that really helps them individually, right? So really being invested into their growth, so to say. In addition to that, as I've tackled already the global recruitment, right, and relocating the talent, it also brings the point that you need to learn the German language, right, to really feel at ease, let's put it this way, in Austria. For that reason, I would be actually one of the examples. I relocated to Austria for my role, and I really had to profit from that benefit to improve my German. And it's a very important benefit that makes my life easier, of course, at work, but also on the personal level, so to say. So team development benefits is one of the core components. The other part I want to mention is the team building, right? So we invest a lot of time and also money into really taking the time to engage outside of work premises with each other. We have designated events, trainings, offsites where we can again exchange more in a formal setting, how we are doing, what's on top of mind. Also, opportunity to celebrate our achievements, guess what, also failures and learnings, right? And finally, to really enhance and build the trust within the team, so to say. In addition, we are also invested, of course, into our work environment, right? Making it more innovative, empowering for our employees. So we definitely look a lot at what office premises we have, and also how can we make employees more effective in our office premises. Maybe to give one example here, we provide, of course, we partner actually with one other startup called Shrunkel, where we provide subsidized lunch and food in Sanosex for all of us, right? And it becomes slowly a tradition, obviously, for lunch ceremonies, let's put it this way, when we all go and get some free food, but at the same time have a break from the innovation, let's put it this way, and actually enjoy again our breaks, let's put it this way. Lastly, what I want to also mention is being in a healthcare, of course, we've got to practice what we preach, meaning we are also having benefits, of course, of leveraging offerings of mental health and counseling. So one of the company providers is the Consentive that really helps us to provide these opportunities for employees from the counseling perspective. And also, of course, physical health, right? Providing, for example, fitness check opportunities for the employees. So really practicing what we preach, so to say. Are these benefits good? I would say yes. Are they? Can they be improved and can we do more? Absolutely. And I very much liked what Louisa said, just continuously checking in with the team. What do you guys like? What other maybe cool ideas you have that we could have in Sana 6? And make us better, right? Make the environment more engaging, and again, provide the right type of perks for the employees.
Yeah, and I think what you said too, looking at it also from an individual perspective, because I think it's a good, I also moved 5 years ago to Austria, and it was super nice that my company offered German classes so I could feel comfortable for where I lived. I mean, with language classes, that's just one example, but thinking on it, okay, if they're new to a place, what are maybe other things or other ways that you can support them? So closing off kind of more of this topic, I wanted to ask Janeka, really looking at it from, we're talking a lot about topics of how to create a diverse team and especially how to keep and attract and retain diverse talent. Is there something that organizations should consider when looking at these marginalized groups in order to retain them when it comes to employee benefit packages?
Well, I think it's in general, and it's already discussed. It's important to check with your employees. Don't make assumptions. For example, with my previous company, very Dutch company, for lunch we had sandwich and cheese. I mean, that's what we have as lunch in the Netherlands. But then people from all over Europe came to work for us, and they were like, well, really against it. So we had to really change our lunch. And you can't assume that everybody is the same as you. Also for flexibility, very often people give flexibility to parents, but there can be a million reasons why also non-parents want the flexibility. So we made sure to offer it to everybody. So that everybody can see how they do this. And I think it's important that when you give people a choice, it's really a choice, and it's not still a push in a certain direction. And to give an example, also how things are perceived. So we had like a lot of gaming stuff in the office in my previous company. So people during lunch could go on an Xbox, they could play soccer, all these things. And then nobody did that. And at a certain point, I was like, why are you not using all these things? And they are like, well, you're always working during lunch, so we don't feel we actually can. So even though the choice was there, people did not feel like it was an actual choice for them, because I was giving basically the wrong example that they needed to work during lunch. So I think it's important to think about things like that. And also it was mentioned people working from home. We had a lot of engineers and people in the product team who were working remotely. And we had all these fancy things in the office. And then at a certain point, one of those engineers said, yeah, I would actually like a great coffee at home. And then we were like, maybe we should rethink our benefits and make sure that we give people at home also something. So they all got a budget to buy an amazing coffee machine. So I think it's just being thoughtful around that, but again, also realistic, because honestly, if things go bad for a company and people start complaining about jam, I would go mad as a founder. I've been a founder. I mean, seriously, would you prefer people losing their job or have a different brand of jam or basically no jam at all? I also think it's important that employees understand it's still work and it's still a business, and all these things are great. But at the end of the day, it's most important that as a business, you grow and make money, and that you can pay people a decent salary.
Yeah, very well said. So speaking on that topic, since a lot of the panelists brought up remote work, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that, just because that's also, I think before Corona times, it was looked at a very unique benefit when companies would offer remote work. And now it seems like after COVID times, this is something pretty standard and sometimes almost required. Louisa, I wanted to ask you, have you seen this also start to change, where this is kind of a requirement for companies to offer?
I don't know that it's got to the stage that it's a requirement yet. I mean, obviously, I do. I also help our startups build their foundational roles. So I'm actually still talking to a lot of potential candidates around also co-founder roles and opportunities with these early stage companies. It's not actually a topic that is regularly brought up. It is sometimes brought up, but we are seeing, for instance, in our own portfolio, about 42% of our actually own startups do offer remote working. So it's definitely perceived as a benefit. I think it's the flexibility. People like that flexibility around there. So I'm encouraged to see it. I'm living in Berlin and in Germany, and I think Germany was slightly slower to adopt this remote working. This was pretty usual for me in the UK. I was actually very used to being able to work 2 to 3 days from home. Pre-COVID wasn't a possibility, certainly in the companies that I was working in, and nor was there any view to change that. You know, being in the office was seen as an absolute essential. And I think with COVID, it's really proven the point that people can be productive at home and in the office. You need to support them. You need to think about their mental welfare. That's something very, very key when you're looking at remote. But I think companies are losing a trick if they don't offer that flexibility. But there are some roles where I do appreciate maybe you would need to be on premise. But I think companies need to think what's best for them. How do they wish to move forward and attract the candidates that fits the environment and the culture that they're building?
Yeah, so really relating it back to also, I think what we've been saying is really asking your teams of what they prefer and looking back to the business.
Absolutely.
Before we move on to our next topic that we are going to discuss, Irina, I wanted to ask you, what is it at Sanos X in terms of remote work? How does that work there?
A good question, thank you. And I actually can really resonate with the words of Louisa. Remote work in general is a flexibility that you provide to the employees, right? In Sanos X, of course, we provide this opportunity as well. But at the same time, I think the main point is what makes the team most effective. That's the most important for them to deliver. How do we set them for the success? The opportunities are there. If it's working from home, having a focus time, fantastic. If it's having a fruitful discussion and a workshop in person, great. Of course, as I mentioned before, we are really looking at creating a cool office environment where employees want to come in and engage and spend the time here as well. But at the same time, you've got to really give the opportunity, of course, to give this flexibility to be remote if needed. So giving this choice to them actually, and seeing what works best for them.
Yeah. So going to our next topic, since we're talking about how to stand out in today's market, a lot of times that also goes hand in hand with employer branding. And there's a lot of statistics out there that having a strong employer branding reduces cost per hire, also reduces employee turnover. So I wanted to start with Janneke. How can companies think about employer branding when it comes to building and attracting a diverse team?
Yeah, I think I heard a great quote last week at All Race. conference for female fund managers, where somebody said, "What you do speaks so loudly, I don't hear what you say." So I think it's very important to actually put in actions, because you can say you're open to diverse teams, la da 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 da, and then people go on your management page and it's all white men. It's just, it doesn't work. And if you only are visible like on the big events, it's also not going to work. So I also spoke to a founder who said, yeah, I've been to all these Black Tuesdays from a particular fund, but when I look at the portfolio, 0 investments in Black founders. And when I needed funding, I couldn't even get a conversation. So please don't do the Black Tuesdays if you don't really follow up. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to employer branding. When it comes to actually hiring, there's different things. But for branding, I think the only thing that really matters are your actions.
Yeah, so really have it show instead of telling.
Yeah. Yes.
Louisa, from your side, is there certain like initiatives that startups can take to strengthen their employer brand?
Absolutely, and I really agree with what Janneke mentioned around actually building your employer brand. Be authentic, live it. Try not to put something aspirational out there, because I think that's a really lost opportunity. It's great to have aspirations and where you want to get. You can share your vision, but be honest and authentic. If you're not there yet, you will be caught out. There are lots of ways that if you're not on brand. That was a great example by Janneke. This can really, you can fall foul of this. So what initiatives can kind of like startups take to improve their own employer brand? Well, take stock of where you are, first of all, and understand what you are great at and what you are slightly weaker at. Certainly talk. Again, I harping on to this, but talk to your employees. What do they think what you're good at? What do they think could be done, could be better? That can be, so you conduct your own kind of like employee brand survey internally. You can also look on, some of these, review sites, Glassdoor, Kununu, etc. Bear in mind, they're always going to gravitate to the more negative stuff, but know that it's out there. Embrace it. I highly recommend, if you are already on Glassdoor and on these, sometimes companies can be very proactive, putting themselves out there, curating that narrative, answer back to any of the questions that come through, but then actually be, again, very intentional around your branding. Don't think because you're not hiring, you do not need to invest in employer branding. More than ever, you need to invest in employer branding. Employer branding isn't just about recruitment. It's actually around how your own employees will feel about your organization as well. They want to be in a company that they feel proud of. You need to be talking about your vision, your mission. So your vision, your long-term, where are you looking to go? Your mission, how are you going to get there? The purpose, how people are feeling around it. Your employees also become your brand ambassadors. You're creating content so that they can share that amongst their own communities and feel proud of where they work, and feel proud of sharing, which has the knock-on effect that, yes, it can help with recruiting, but also, especially in these more turbulent times, really sometimes help people feel a little bit more, less nervous around what is going on within the organization. Again, it's that communication style. So I would always, if you can't afford someone to do and have that full-time their job, then, I think as a founder, you need to be making regular updates where you are with your product, what you're doing. Encourage your employees to also create content. It doesn't need to be a single person, but try to make it make it everyone's responsibility to be sharing what stuff your company is doing. I'm so sorry. So I'm going to stop there and let someone else go, and I'll let them back.
Yeah, but I think it's a really good point of what Louisa was saying, is it's really to think about employer branding not from a recruiting perspective, but also on a perspective of really looking at, we want to work here as employees. We want to feel great. We want to tell our friends how cool it is to work here. Maybe just like a follow-up question, because I know maybe some people are watching right now and thinking, okay, I want to do maybe an employer survey. How would you suggest to them to start, or maybe what questions should they definitely not miss with that?
So, I mean, actually, there are survey tools that you can do, but also if you don't have access to those tools, you can literally do it on a type form sheet. And it can be as basic as, what do you really enjoy about us? How likely would you be to refer us to a friend? What do you think we could be doing better? How could we improve? It doesn't need to be really over-engineered. There's just kind of like basic questions that you could be asking to actually get that feedback from.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've seen a lot of startups use as well, like Google Forms, Typeform. So there's a lot of things out there if you're watching and not sure where to start.
And you know what? There's so much on the internet. Literally, if you wanted to get that information, just Google it and you will find umpteen questions. So pick the questions that resonate to you and that makes sense to you as a company.
And so moving to Irina, how do you do employee surveys at Sanos X, and how do you kind of look at this topic of employer branding?
Thank you so much. And Louisa, I can absolutely resonate with what you've been sharing. Actually got empowered as well. So thank you for that. Do we do the surveys? Yes, we do. And it was a simple survey, again, not over-engineered, like a net promoter score, simple question, right? And again, the insights that you get are remarkable. It gives you so much new perspectives, ideas how to improve, because employees care and they want us to get better together, right? They treat Sanos 6 and the employer brand as their own, right? So they're really passionate about it, and they're willing to speak up and share. Also tackling the employer branding topic in general, now being for 1.5 years here, having different types of experiences recruitment-wise, obviously embracing this learning, seeing, okay, what actually worked, what didn't, observing and getting inspired by what's happening on the market. What are cool other ideas that companies implement and that makes them stand out on the crowd, right? Embracing those learnings and inspirations. In my case, actually, I also reached out to subject matter experts just to share my ideas, let them be challenged, and perhaps coach me in that sense. What can we also do differently? And last but not least, what I also want to highlight, the importance of having in-house ambassadors. The program that I've mentioned earlier, the Entrepreneur in Residence, it keeps on evolving and getting better thanks to that. The success stories of hires from the previous years helps us to build a story stronger out there for the candidates, showcase certain examples, and basically get more exposure to talent and attract them eventually into Sanos 6.
Thank you. So moving on now, looking at the time to our last topic of today. So if companies are still looking to recruit or recruiting for, let's just say, business critical roles, I want to start with Janenka. In your firm, you've mentioned that you talk a lot about not having a diversity mandate, especially when it comes to investing in companies. I'd love you to talk more about that. So that approach when it comes to not only your investment strategy, but how you look at hiring for diverse talent and teams.
Yes, no, I think indeed, I don't think you need a diversity mandate to hire diverse people, because you can just hire the best people. The problem obviously is bias. People hire people that look like them. and where they recognize themselves. So you need to, well, first of all, make sure that you get, in our case, diverse deal flow, but in this case, a diverse talent pool. And that also means checking where you need to be. In our experience, if we advertise on LinkedIn, the candidates are not very diverse. So if you see that, you should change your strategy. So for us, it turned out that, for example, Sifted and Included VC were really great sources for diverse talent. So you need to find out where you can find these people. I think that's really important. I once had a person saying, yeah, they just don't come to us. But you can't assume that's the mistake of the other person. It's your mistake because they don't know where to find you, or you don't come across as really welcome. So you need to change yourself. I think that's very important. And then I think it's important to look for skills versus people's resume. We still give a lot of credit to certain universities, certain companies where people worked, and we don't look enough at what people actually can do. And one of our portfolio companies, Tescorilla, they have pre-hiring assessments. So there you can check for people's skills. And what we do, for example, and all our clients do, is before they look at people's resume, they first have them do a few tests. And that's, of course, really different for each role. In our case, we look for critical thinking because we want people to see through all the amazing decks we get, which are all going to be unicorns, but also creativity and numerical reasoning are important for us. So we let everybody go through these tests, and the ones that are really good, then we look at their resume and have an interview with them. But then you also get a lot of surprising people that are different than what you would normally select based on resume. And I think especially for startups, it's so important to hire people with the right attitudes, because people that have the right attitude, they can learn everything. They will put in the work to get it done. If people are just rigid and strict and maybe a little bit lazy, well, obviously don't have the right attitude, it will never work out. You need these people with that perfect attitude, even if they have slightly less skills. That would always be my preference, because they will make it work. They will put in the hours to learn whatever they need to learn. So those are my few.
Yeah, I think in terms of, I've heard this so many times, and I, especially in the US where I'm from, is, does someone really need to go to university? Let's just say they couldn't afford to go to university. They wanted to do, let's just go to a job instead of going to university. Are they really not as capable? So I think it's really, really great that you bring up that point, because it's very, very important. Louisa, when, let's just say, a founder comes to you and they're struggling to figure out where to go to find talent. I know Janneke was talking about maybe, LinkedIn might not be the best place. What are other options that they can try?
So I think when it comes to...
Well, sorry, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying LinkedIn is the wrong place. I'm just saying for us on LinkedIn, we couldn't find the right audience. It was only a very specific group and not very diverse. That's why we went to other places, but maybe for others, it works perfectly. So my message was not so much LinkedIn is wrong, but more like find the places where you find diverse talent. Make sure your talent pool is diverse where you select from.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm really fortunate that I get to work with really early stage startups, and I'm actually on our diversity task force at Cherry Ventures as well. So this is a topic dear to my heart, and I'm always trying to encourage startups when they're in the very early phases. This is a fantastic opportunity to build your diverse leadership team. You need to be thinking about the power of 30. If you don't have representation of 30% in a room, you do not have a diverse group of thinking. And if you want to attract diverse candidates, They want to feel comfortable. They want to feel safe. So again, have that in mind, build the foundations. Now, how do you go about finding that if you don't already have it? You have to be very, very intentional about it. There are lots and lots of routes to market. I mean, as a founder themselves, they probably already have their network. Maybe it's a certain group of individuals, and maybe it's not diverse enough. Maybe they have some employees. Start thinking about their networks as well. But again, you might fall into the bias that they would hire like-minded individuals. So be mindful of that when you do have employee referral schemes, that you're probably going to get similar types of profiles coming through. That can be great if you've got great employees that are doing fabulous work, especially with diverse networks, but also it can bring a bias into it. And then I think you just need to look everywhere. You leave no stone unturned. You can look at networks. I mean, I am a fan of LinkedIn, and certainly there are many but I think when you're using LinkedIn, don't just think that an advert is going to attract it. Think about reaching out to specific groups. Join groups. There's some fantastic groups and networks, even on LinkedIn. If you're looking for diversity as well, join those groups. Share content, not just jobs, but also look at who is in those networks. Try and attract almost talent magnets to your organization. If you can get somebody who is in one of these diverse networks that's talking, at conferences, bring them to your organization. That can be a fantastic ambassador to bringing extra additional talent to your organization. If you are working with suppliers, make it absolute, stipulate in their contract, they cannot submit anything but a diverse selection of candidates to you. If they don't work with them anymore. They need to realize that this is super, super important. Work with yourselves. I'm fantastic to hear, and congratulations, you've got a job board. Come on to here. Get another aspect of candidates through here. As I say, just leave no stone unturned. Sometimes it does mean being a little bit more proactive, though. I do actually encourage our organizations to actually do hire a specific recruiter. People don't realize how time-consuming it is, how time-consuming headhunting is, but you have to be intentional. Go out to the people that you want to attract. That's it.
So since we're out of time, and that's a perfect note, I think, to conclude this session. No, I think it was wrapped up really, really great in terms of looking at LinkedIn. I think a lot of people look at LinkedIn as the only source versus it's a good place to start, but there's so many other different ways of doing that. I want to thank all of you for this really fun conversation. Louisa, Irina, Yanka, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with the three of you.
Thank you so much for your invite. Really enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good rest of the day.
Bye.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.